So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us to take a look at the newest integration from Cities Digital. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jennifer Murray, and I'm an account manager for Cities Digital. I also have Brandon Pickett here with me. He's the director of business development for SIGNiX. So we're both going to work together and take you through our new Laserfiche SIGNiX integration. So first up, Brandon is going to go over what SIGNiX actually is and what it can do for your organization and its benefits as a digital signature solution. Then I'm going to go over the SIGNiX integration and its functionality, as well as the accompanying workflow activities. We will then have a discussion and overview on how these tools can be used within your organization. And then we get to see the integration in action. So now I'm going to turn it over to Brandon so he can give you an overview of SIGNiX.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Cities Digital, for hosting this. We appreciate the invitation. So I want to tell you in just about 5 or 6 minutes, we'll go through a little bit about who SIGNiX is. We'll cover electronic versus digital and some of the key differentiators of us and some of the other companies out there in the digital signature space. So our company, SIGNiX, has been around since 2002, so almost 15 years. So we've been in the digital/electronic signature market for about as long as anybody out there. And so everything that we do is cloud-based. We don't do anything that's on-prem. All of our services are cloud-based, and so there's no maintenance, there's no upgrades or anything on the SIGNiX side. You simply buy a user license, and you get transactions with that. So we adhere to all of the different compliance out there, such as the eSIGNiX, which is a federal law that was signed in place about 15 years ago, as well as the state level laws, which is UETA as well. We also adhere or comply to a lot well in our higher compliance type industries. And so you'll see that a lot in healthcare, wealth management, real estate, life sciences, government, and financial institutions. And that's typically because the higher compliance requires a lot more restriction. So there are certain laws, for example, like HIPAA in healthcare that we comply with. 21 CFR is something that you'll hear in life sciences. So we certainly are able to do anything in those specific verticals as well as anything outside of those verticals. And so we're seeing a lot more feedback from just standard manufacturing verticals in that area as well. One of the ways that we go to market is through partnerships. And so what we've done with Cities Digital as a Laserfiche partner is we basically take our product and we embed that into that process, so that ECM, for example, Laserfiche here. And the benefits of you doing that is you're already familiar with that system. And so you can go through a workflow or whatever through Laserfiche that you're familiar with, and then just we apply the electronic signature piece of it on the back end. So we're going to cover a little bit about not all e-signatures are created equal, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the difference between a digital signature and an electronic signature, because when you choose, depending on the type of documents you're sending or the risk level of the documents or certain verticals or compliance, if you choose an incorrect type of signature, that could invalidate some of the documents and not make them legally binding. E-signature evidence is absolutely key because you remember the reason for that is a lot of these are signed remotely, so you don't have someone coming into your office to actually sign with a wet ink. So e-signature evidence is actually absolutely critical. So the next, we're going to talk about the different types of electronic signatures. And so there's basically two types of signatures, electronic and digital. And so the best way to describe an electronic signature, and I'm going to show you this here in just a minute, is electronic signature is really nothing more than an image on a page. It's just a stamp and an impression on a page. So there's no data or anything to be able to back that up. So when you get into legal or certain requirements of electronic signatures, if you're unable to validate that may not make that document they're signing legally binding. But with digital signatures, we use a cryptography that allows us to embed certificates and information inside the actual signature itself on the PDF. And so you're able to pull stuff like audit trails, and, different types of authentication. So there's lots of data back behind that, so that if a signature was actually disputed, then you've got information to be able to validate that and back that up. Inside the digital world, and there are other people, there are some companies that do electronic and digital, but we do digital. But what we do specifically is called an independent digital signature. And so with independent, what we do is we take and we embed that information inside the actual PDF. And what that means for the client is they don't have to come online. They don't have to log back into their account. They don't even need an internet connection. They simply need to have a copy of that document, and that's it. And we'll show you an example of that here in just a minute. The benefit of that is when you get in certain industries, some people don't want us holding on to customer information or customer data. They want to be able to hold that client data themselves and be responsible for that. So with us, you're able to do that. You can hold the only copy of the document. We can delete the copy that originally was signed. And then if you need to validate that, you never have to come back to SIGNiX to be able to validate that. And there's no expiration or anything on that. With dependent, what happens is if you click on that signature on the PDF, it's going to bring up a hyperlink. In that hyperlink, it's going to ask you to log into your account, and it's going to go out and validate that duplicate copy that's sitting out on their server somewhere. So we're an independent digital signature provider, and a lot of people out there on the dependent side. So independent certainly has its benefits. The next thing we're going to talk about is how we actually do this. So this is a screenshot. And if you look, there's a couple things I'm going to talk about on this particular page. If you look up in the left-hand corner there, you'll see a green checkbox. So all of our documents are what's considered tamper evident. So we know if someone is trying to go in and alter that document or change that document during that process, then it's going to give us an X, and it's going to let you know that that signature may or may not be valid. In this particular case, you can see the green check, which is good. We know that the document has not been altered and or changed in any way. And so what you're looking at here on this screenshot is where somebody's actually clicked on the signature there at the bottom, and it pulls up that signature properties. If we were to click on that signature properties piece, then it's going to pull up all the information, who the certificate authority is, who issued that certificate. There's other information in there that's contained that talks about the remote IP address and all that information to be able to validate that signature. And again, this is just a copy of the PDF. They're not having to go online. They're not having to connect to some, internet or something like that. You can validate by simply just having the PDF, which is why it allows you to delete that second copy and hold on to the only copy of the document. All of our documents are long-term valid, and what that means is there's no expiration on an actual electronic signature or digital signature through SIGNiX. So if you needed to validate that signature 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, it would be as valid as wet ink would be. The other thing that you want to look for, and we're going to talk about next, is the audit trail that we do. So not only the way that we do signatures, and you can validate signatures, but during that entire process, we capture all of this information. Again, just to kind of give you an idea, and this is a copy of the HTML version of the audit trail. And so we'll capture, obviously, first name, last name, email address, remote IP address, all the way down to the browser and the operating system that they're using, as well as a copy of their certificate and an encoded version of the actual document. So all of that information is captured in our audit trail. So we have a very, very detailed audit trail. And then to recap here on our SIGNiX, our digital signatures, on the next slide, again, we give you legal evidence at last. So you never have to come back SIGNiX. This talks again about the independence. Once you have a copy of that document, that's all you need to be able to validate that. You own the original. Once we put an electronic signature or digital signature on that, it's yours to keep. You can validate again yourself. And everything we do is based on established standards, all the way down to the PDF, compliance with e-sign, UETA, all of that's based on established standards. Again, tamper protection, we talked about that. We have the ability to tamper evident means that we know that no one has changed the document inside the transaction, but we also have the ability to do called tamper proofing, which means once that transaction is complete, if we want to lock down that PDF to where it could never be altered, we can do that as well. We also give lots of flexibility because you are doing this remotely. You want to know who it is that's actually signing the document. So we give you lots of flexibility through authentication. So you can do it via email. You can do secret code via text. We also use a third-party database to where we can use Social Security database, and we'll validate those against that third-party database. So there's lots of flexibility. Again, you have the option. There's nothing mandatory. Two things usually determine what this is, and that's compliance within the industry or the risk level of the document. And then the last thing is you can sign on any device. So we're pretty much device agnostic, whether it's an Apple, it's a tablet, it's a mobile phone, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what type of browser you use and or operating system you use. So again, kind of a nutshell, we are an independent digital signature provider, and you can sign anywhere, anytime, and then they'll talk to you next a little bit about the integration itself. So Jennifer, I'll let you take over now.
Great, thank you for sharing, Brandon. So that was pretty exciting. So now that we've explored what SIGNiX has to offer, I bet you're really wondering how this can work with Laserfiche. So the SIGNiX integration allows your Laserfiche repository to connect with SIGNiX and makes capturing signatures simple and efficient. There are four main components to the Laserfiche integration. There's the integration button in Laserfiche, the SIGNiX web portal, signature status updates in Laserfiche, and the envelope ID. So the Laserfiche integration button makes the integration accessible directly from the toolbar in Laserfiche. In Laserfiche, all you have to do is select which document you would like to be sent for signature, configure the recipient email address in the metadata fields, and then click the SIGNiX button in the client, and it will send the document to SIGNiX. The next piece of the integration is the SIGNiX web portal. Users will then be able to access the SIGNiX web portal once that button is clicked and configure all of those options in that web portal. So in this web portal, they're going to be able to add any additional recipients, additional documents, and select options for the signature, such as where that signature is going to be placed on the document itself. From here, they'll be able to send and configure the recipient, and the recipient will receive an email notification that they have a document that is ready to sign. Next, we have the signature status. So during this whole process of clicking the integration button and using the web portal, the status of the signature will actually be updated in the Laserfiche client. So from when the document is sent to SIGNiX and sent to the recipient to when it's all the way back in Laserfiche. So there are going to be four status updates that are updated in Laserfiche during this process. There is suspend. So when the document has been sent to SIGNiX using the integration button and is awaiting configuration from the sender. And then there is the send status update. So once the document has been configured in the SIGNiX web portal and is sent to the recipient and is awaiting signature, if there are multiple parties that need to sign that document, party complete will be the status update when one of the initial party members has completed the document, but it's still awaiting signature from another party. And finally, it will show as complete when the document has been signed and is saved back in Laserfiche. So next we have the envelope ID. The envelope ID is a unique identifier that's generated by SIGNiX that's associated with the document set. So as you can see, the envelope ID is accessible in the column views, and this is used to help workflow connect with that particular document set, as well as to identify that document set for any other additional activities within workflow and Laserfiche. Now that we were talking about workflow, let's kind of go over our workflow activities. So the SIGNiX workflow activities are a fundamental part of the integration. They allow Laserfiche to automatically push and pull documents to SIGNiX as part of new and existing business processes. The first workflow activity is the Retrieve Document Set XML. So remember that button that we pushed with the integration? You can totally skip that step. This activity will automate the configuration portion of the document signing process. So if the documents are sent to SIGNiX manually, they need to indicate where the document needs to be signed. This workflow activity uses an XML directive to indicate where the sent document needs to be signed, who it needs to be sent to, and all of the other details associated with that document set. The next workflow activity is the Request SIGNiX Signature. So this workflow activity will automate the process of sending a document set to SIGNiX and requesting that signature and importing it back into Laserfiche. So let's take a look at some examples of what this integration can do for you. SIGNiX can be utilized for anything that needs a signature: contracts, business proposals, expense reports. The ease of use and security makes SIGNiX integration ideal for partnering with Laserfiche for both internal and external signature needs. So just as Brandon mentioned earlier, SIGNiX is secure, reliable, and doesn't expire. So this makes it really ideal for contract signatures for vendors and clients. So this allows both parties the ease and efficiency of digital signatures, as well as knowing the comfort and security in knowing that these signatures are certified. You can get, SIGNiX can be utilized for anything that needs signature. Business proposals can be easily sent and authorized and elevate the efficiency of your internal processes. You can allow employees to get their expense reports expedited and make things easier for management. And you can definitely cut down on the time employee onboarding takes with all of the documents and paperwork that need to be signed in that process. All right, and now for the best part, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a live demonstration of the integration. All right, so I just need to get signed in here. So here we can take a quick look at our workflow. So this is the workflow, as you can see, with the different workflow activities, working together with some of the out-of-the-box workflow activities that are already there. And as I mentioned before, so this workflow can be kicked off with information from anywhere, essentially. So you can have a form kick off this process, you can have a database lookup kick off this process, a document upload, any kind of information gathering activity can be used to start this sending process. So I'm just going to fill out this form really quick. And this can be submitted by the public, so you could have a new client submit this form for a new client option and have their contract sent to them automatically when their application is approved. You could have a new employee fill out this form, or you could just simply have this as an internal process when you want to kick off that process after you have hired someone, after you have submitted an expense report. Really anything can be used to kick off this process. So it's really very versatile, which is great. So we can take a look at this workflow again really quick. So the request SIGNiX signature is going to be the first step in the process. Over on the right, you can see where this is configured. You just need to make that XML directive so you can decide where that document needs to be sent and have that whole portion taken care of so you don't have to manually do that every time you want to start this workflow. And then, as you can see, it's waiting for the document to be signed, finding that entry, doing all of those things, and then it will jump to the retrieve document set and retrieve that XML information and the information from that form and use it to automatically fill out any metadata. So as you can see, this is a really diverse workflow activity and can be used in any type of business process that you need a signature sent. So in just a moment here, I will have my notification sent from forms that I need to sign my document. All right, so my internet is being a little bit sluggish today. I think I made it work a little bit too much. So luckily I have done this several times, so I'll go ahead and just use an older notification for you. So this is what the web portal will look like for a user that has just gone on to sign, not someone that has been sending documents to sign. So we just select a signing password to make sure it is verified and secure. And I can choose a signature or draw my own. Let's try drawing my own and see how great this is. Awesome. There's my initials. Clearly, I need a little bit more practice actually doing that portion. So we just verify that, get ready to go. It'll sign with my signature. And I can review that document and see where I have signed that. And that is all good to go. So then we can go back into Laserfiche. And we will see here that I have my documents all in my own awesome folder. Sent right there. And that is how the workflow activities work. So now we are going to open up the floor for questions. One of the questions was, does this integration work with both the application and web-based version of the repository? That is a great question, and I believe it does. As if you have are primarily using the web client, it should work much the same as the web client and the client are generally interchangeable when it comes to information stored in them. Another one of the questions was, when I mentioned a document upload to start off the process, a workflow is not required. So it can be done both ways. So in the beginning of the presentation, I was talking about the integration button. So workflow is not required for that portion, obviously, because you can just, hey, have this document, I want it sent to SIGNiX for signature, and then you would have to go into the web portal and configure that. If you want an automatic process to start off with, if you just want a document upload, like say I upload a contract and I want that automatically sent for signature, you would need a workflow required for that. So that's what the workflow activities are for, but they are included in the initial integration. And someone had a question about cost. So I believe the initial integration is about $2,000, and I will get anyone a quote if they need it. And Brandon can talk about the cost of SIGNiX itself, because you would need some SIGNiX licensing, obviously, to use their product. So Brandon, you can go ahead and talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the way that it's priced for the electronic signature piece of it is basically you buy a user license, and that user license includes so many transactions. And so it starts typically at $20, and then it tiers down from there. Obviously, the more you buy, the less expensive it becomes per user license. And you can pool those licenses. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you had 10 users. That 10 users with those transactions gets you 240 per user. You can have 2,400 transactions a year, and we don't care how those are used. So you may have someone that's a power user, for example, that uses 300-400. Someone else uses 100. So as long as you don't go over your pooled transactions, then you're good. And that's pretty much how the pricing works on our side.
Perfect. So we've got quite a few other questions. Brandon, I did have one more question for you that you can answer. So someone wants to know if, as the standard is PDF, someone's standard is for long-term storage is TIFF, would they be able to convert that with the same signature standards?
I don't think you can convert it to a TIFF file. Everything that we do is in PDF, and the reason for that's the way that we stamp the digital signature into the actual PDF. The only thing that comes back, and you guys on the city's digital side can correct me, I think the only thing that comes back in a different format is the actual audit trail, and I believe it comes back in an XML format, and then you can just convert it to whatever format that you want so that you can read it, but it has to be in PDF format for us.
Gotcha. And we had a couple other questions about how workflow will route this. So one of the questions was the workflow can contain many instances of something getting moved around internally and externally and getting signed by all parties. And yes, that is correct. You can have the same document routed to several different people for signature. So if you need several supervisor signatures on something, that will be routed to all of them. We had another question, security of data and forms back and forth from Laserfiche to SIGNiX. So I'm not sure exactly what that is referring to security-wise, but Laserfiche and SIGNiX both are encrypted and have very robust security. So if you have some more specific questions about how they maybe transition between back and forth and how that's encrypted, you can get back to us later and I'd be happy to answer that for you.
I can probably answer that, Jennifer. Probably
perfect.
What they're looking for is the in transit and in rest, we do AES 256. So I think that's probably the answer they're looking for.
Okay,
but if it's not, you can let Jennifer know, and we'll get you an answer. If you want to go down, how we secure our data center, we can get you information on that as well.
Great, thank you, Brandon. So I had one last question. It sounds like you have to use workflow to leverage the integration, and they're heavy users of forms. Are there any options to use SIGNiX with forms only? If not, is there an option to initiate a process using forms? So yes, absolutely. So as you saw, I just initiated that process with forms. I know you're not heavy users of workflow and you're more into forms, and we can definitely configure that with the business processes, but the business processes in forms utilize workflow quite a bit and utilize that tool. So it would really be kind of working together, but you could generally mostly have forms take on the bulk of that process submission to have that carried over. Okay, great. Well, I apologize if I didn't get to your question. There are a couple that were pretty similar, so I wanted to try and answer as many as I could. So if you have any questions at all, you can contact sales at Cities Digital. Our number's up there as well, and you can feel free to contact me as well. Again, my name is Jennifer, and Brandon was here with me helping me out. So thank you all for attending. I really appreciate your time today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.